Growing up as a child, my best friend in school was an Iranian. Her and I actually went to Persian Muslim school together. I would have to wear a headscarf and go to school. And the days that my mom would take us to school, we would always go to school late. And I never understood why I was going to school late. It didn't make any sense to me. But I remember for some reason that one time that we actually went on time, that in the auditorium of the school, there were a group of children who were kneeling to the ground and they were praying. In the back of my head, I always knew I was Jewish going into the school. I always knew I was different. I knew that I wasn't Muslim, but I knew that ethnically and culturally, I was in par with them.
The Jews of Iran are the oldest community of Jews in the Middle East outside of Israel. At the time of the revolution, we had approximately 200,000 Jews of Iranian descent living in Israel. We probably have approximately somewhere in the 60 to 80,000 Jews, Iranian Jews, living in the United States today.
زردی من از تو، سرخی تو از من. زردی من از تو، سرخی تو از من.
So when I was a child and someone asked me where I was from, I would say I'm Persian. And I could actually never fully use my mouth to say American. The fact that I've never been to Iran has manifested into my life in so many ways, shapes, and forms. It's something that's become day to day. It's something that's literally become hour to hour, minute by minute, second by second. It's hard to believe that it's so much a part of my everyday life.
Three or 4 years ago, we were discussing where to take our summer vacation at, and Yael, my younger daughter, suggested Iran, Tehran. And I told her, well, you know, Iran and Israel are not the best of friends now, and they don't like allowing each other's citizens to visit. And then she amazed me with this insulted look, and she said, but we'll tell them that I'm an Iranian girl. And she couldn't, I mean. That's the beauty of it, that Jews and Muslims can celebrate it together without any shade of difference at all.
שהם הריצו את האש, ואז כל דבר שקשור לאור, לאש. That's the classical half-scene table. It's wonderful.
I really deeply sense myself as 100% Israeli and 100% Iranian. For me, there is no conflict. Having said that, of course, it's picking up the remainings of a lost, defeated battle. Because here I am, 34 years not setting foot in Iran, not having visited Iran. המרורים והסבל שהיו מנת חלקי גרמו לי לא פעם לחשוב שאילו היה זה ה-12 או ה-14 בחודש, הכל היה אחרת. באותו יום, כמו בכל יום, הכניסו אותנו, כלומר את אחותי ואותי. I just happened to Google one time in Hebrew Farsi literature, and Google answered back, "Did you mean Russian literature?" And I was so shocked that Hebrew Google did not recognize the term Farsi literature. I don't want you to just read it as if it were a Hebrew piece. I want you to realize through reading that there is a whole language that represents a whole culture behind this literature. And then he speaks about his uncle, which is the Uncle Napoleon, the main character in the book. And I kept it as Dai John, and then I explained that Dai is an uncle, the brother of the mother, a maternal uncle. So whenever he says Dai John, I didn't feel comfortable enough to literally translate it into Hebrew, into a dear uncle. I kept it as Dai John, and I explained what Dai is and what John is, so that the ear gets familiarized with the Farsi sounds. And I did that many times in the book. Maybe it complicates the reading, but I think that there's a value, an added value to this kind of reading. A book can give you really the sounds and the taste of the language, and I thought that was a wonderful opportunity for Israelis to really taste the Farsi language a little bit. من یک روز گرم تابستان دقیقاً 13 مرداد حدود ساعت 3:15 کم بعد از ظهر عاشق شدم. تلخی‌ها و زجر هجری که چشیدم. I actually myself see it very much as a political act. For me it was part of my political activism. I saw in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, and they put a picture of my uncle Napoleon, and it was accompanied by one sentence. "Oh, what do you know? There are sweet people in Iran," or something like that, which I think that would be a very honest Israeli reaction. I mean, so they are not all wild, bearded, crazy people out to destroy us. They are human beings with fears and joys, and they laugh and they cry and they have great sense of humor, and they have a depth of thinking, and they have political views, and they are full human beings. It's funny even to say that, but this actually might surprise many Israelis.
It's actually a tile that was made in Esfahan, the city that my family is from. But if you look closely, the artisan was actually Jewish, and it says Shana Tova. The combination of both Iranian and Jewish elements that we see here have also been a way in which I incorporate elements in my own actual artwork. This piece is actually called Dressed as a Persian Rug. There are pictures of me putting on makeup, going through the process of putting on makeup, putting on my lipstick, putting on my mascara, blush, putting on my earrings, ornamenting myself, but once again going through the process of removing that makeup, that sense of beauty. And that works hand in hand with all of a sudden of wearing the head covering, then removing the head covering, and then once again putting on the process of makeup. So a running theme that I have in a lot of my work is the use of the chador. And the chador, or the headscarf, is something that I like to wear because it's a very specific visual element that when people look at it, they can basically read that it has something to do with the Middle East, it has something to do with being an Iranian.
The piece, as it was a commission for Mayor Bloomberg, served as an invitation to a celebratory event at Gracie Mansion for the Persian New Year. The piece is actually designed so that it mirrors and replicates Iranian art and bridges a symbiotic relationship between how Islam influenced the Jewish home.
This version is called the Matriarchs. What it is it's a ceremonial enclave called the Haft Scene. If you look at the exterior of the piece, you see that the frame is actually an old Quran. And here I've removed the text so that it has no religious connotation. And here the story starts with a photograph of my great-great-grandmother, and her legacy is present to a total of 5 generations, including herself. And you have my grandmother over here, who's the last living generation and has a connection to my great-great-grandmother. Then you have myself and my mother, who are her offspring. And the Haft Scene is something that you put together every year for the Persian New Year, which occurs on the spring equinox. It is also a holiday that's not only celebrated by Iranian Jews, but Muslims and Zoroastrians and Baha'is. And it's something that, you know, my ancestors had been practicing for generations. Art has the ability to transcend when you have a message. And my message has nothing to do with hate or the others. It's a message of commonality.
My father was the manager of a bank branch, which was right across the street from our house. One night we went out, it was winter, it was very cold, and they used to sell sweet, hot beets in the streets in Iran. And we went to get some, and we were just walking, the 4 of us. And I remember standing on the other side of the street, seeing a group of demonstrators breaking into his branch and setting it on fire. And we were just standing on the other side watching it. It had, by the way, nothing to do with my father being Jewish. It was such a shocking experience that I think that was the moment that they realized that this is not going to be our place anymore.
I remember when I was in the 2nd grade, and I was sitting in the far corner of my room, and I remember staring out into the window and then gazing into this Persian rug in my bedroom. It was blue with these floral ornamentations, and I was playing with the fine threads on the corners of the rug. And I was just thinking to myself, what is a revolution? How can my parents leave the country that they grew up in and all of a sudden come to America? How is that possible? Did my parents really do that? Did they really have a different life in a different place, in a different time?
an older couple that we didn't knew, of course. We just shared a table, and apparently they heard us speaking Hebrew, and it clicked something in his memory. And he was telling us about his work in a Jewish hotel where he served as Goy Shel Shabbat, which is the Gentile that does the work that Jews aren't allowed to do on Shabbat. It's nice because then, you know, your different identities cross each other in so many different intersections, you know. An Iranian Muslim working in a Jewish hotel in New York, whom we meet in a Nowruz celebration in Tampa. He was very happy to hear that we were from Jerusalem. And well, I think that generally that's the reaction we get from Muslim Iranians. Nothing of the hostility that many people would imagine them to have. Nothing at all. I mean, I never had an incident that I wasn't welcome as a Jew among other Iranians.
Words cannot fully describe what I feel right now. This is absolutely incredible. It's like a way of me actually being able to connect to my Iranian culture and identity. It's like I feel like I'm walking in a parallel universe. It's absolutely surreal because everything that I'm witnessing right now is really like reminiscent of what my mom has told me about her childhood and the things that she did with her family,
I understand the importance of what America was for my family. I am an American, and I'm a hybrid. I'm an Iranian-American Jew, and there are absolutely no means of severing any of those parts of my identity.
My identity is made out of different components. A Jew, I think the first thing I would say is Jewish, because I was born Jewish before I was Israeli, and I mean, that's my first identity. And then Iranian and Israeli, but also political activist is part of my identity, and of course being a mother is part of my identity, and being a woman is part of my identity. So, and I think identity is a fluid thing, and it's an evolving thing. So, you know, it's the beauty of it. You can become and be so many things at the same time and in different times in your life.
The political divide that exists between Iran and Israel is a very complicated divide. I think that it has put Iranians back into that complicated position of, you know, you're either with us or you're against us. And I don't know that it's that simple.
I came across a very interesting publication, very mad about the translations, accusing me of being a Zionist agent that chose these two books because they are very critical of the Iranian society and the current regime, etc. But I can understand why this specific regime would be intimidated by such bridges that can actually introduce the two societies to one another.
I feel like I'm that bridge. I feel like I am that necessary bridge between the tension found between Israel and Iran, and that unifying factor that says, hey, well, you know what? There's actually someone who is both Iranian and Jewish who shares this duality in culture and identity and brings it all in one place.
I greatly believe in the power of words and of literature and of art. But I think that this is really just one drop in a huge, huge sea of illness that needs to be healed in many, many different ways.